3 tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where topics of conversation include the topic of the day, which is us going on a deep dive into our 2 College Football Playoff Semifinals. Of course, the Rose Bowl between 1 seed Michigan, 4 seed Alabama, and the Sugar Bowl between 2 seed Washington and 3 seed Texas. Also in the chat, including matchup discussions. There's also a very, just a question that I think a lot of people are talking about right now. Was Caleb Williams holding USC back? I think that's what college football is talking about right now. In the wake of a 6-touchdown performance from Miller Moss as USC wins 42-28. We don't need to go deep dive on the ins and outs of the game unless you've got a specific opinion. But DK, as we welcome you back from your travels up to New York, jumping on the mothership and serving some duties there. I mean, I guess we walk away way more encouraged on the vibes around USC just with the way that group rallied.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. We were wondering if Lincoln Riley was going to bolt to the NFL looking for an exit strategy post Caleb Williams. I think, that's still always an option, but I think you can put that to bed now. And the bigger question mark was what happens, the future, what's life like after Caleb Williams? And I think what we saw out of our guy, 6 tutties, Pac-12 bowl record, Holiday Bowl record, USC record. I mean, it doesn't get better than what Miller Moss put down. I thought also, too, just his execution of the offense, aside from the stats, he just looked comfortable. Anytime there was a challenge, he responded. If Louisville scored, he put up an answer, right back. So faced a little bit of pressure situations there. Can I put out a PSA, though?
Yeah, sure.
Just in general, something I've noticed last night, started to get my timeline peppered a little bit, and I can only imagine it's going to get a little bit more increased with all the I told you so's, or this is the same Louisville team that,
oh no,
Florida State couldn't score on with their third string.
Oh,
look what USC did with their third string. Just if you take bowl season for anything but what it is, which is a bunch of exhibitions, it's basically spring football is what we're watching, and you try to make a correlation between what you saw in the regular season, just stop, because you will lose a lot of respect from anyone that knows how college football works, including myself. So just keep the tweets to yourself.
I made the joke on Twitter yesterday. It's like anytime I watch a team win a bowl game, I'm like, I think this team can win 10 games next year.
Yeah. No, that's where I'm at too. I come out of it and look, I thought, for example, how about the Louisville side of this? Let's put Florida State to the side, but Jeff Brom said our defense got exposed. He was, and I saw a lot of accurate commentary that Louisville offense didn't really get better in those last weeks of the season, and so that was that was something that I did not see coming whatsoever. And I was, very much on the USC doesn't care. They're totally checked out. Look at these opt-outs. And so there's something to be said for the fact that group, and again, they took a punch early. Remember, it's Louisville comes out, they score first. There's, Miller Moss can't get anything going offensively, and to get up off the mat after a really poor start and be able to, like you said, Danny, keep coming back with answers and never check out of the game, it is far more impressive of a reflection. We had a more impressive reflection of the DNA of the Lincoln Riley program in this bowl game than we did most Saturdays during the season. And maybe that's a problem, but I think it was something that at least USC can carry into the offseason to help build a little confidence going into the Big Ten era.
I mean, I think it's also a reflection of how tough it is to judge quarterbacks, right? I mean, guys, USC has been pretty aggressive in the transfer portal with quarterbacks. The last time we saw Miller Moss play any real significant snaps was like last year's Colorado game, and he was pretty terrible, to be honest. And clearly USC didn't think much of him because they're out there, flirting with Walker Howard or
Will Howard.
Will Howard from Kansas State. So we see this all the time. Like teams misjudge what they have in quarterbacks. The way you play in practice doesn't always translate to how you play in games. However, I do think we should probably read into that. Like I'm not all aboard the Miller Moss train. He made some nice throws, but they also had some just ridiculously good screens drawn up that Louisville did not handle very well. And a lot of those explosive plays were, yak yards on some of those cross screens that USC ran with great effectiveness. I was actually pretty impressed with USC not giving Louisville a lot of freebies. Mm-hmm. That was kind of a hallmark of the USC defense this year. Just nobody around, right? And USC's defense they didn't do anything amazing, but they didn't give up just a lot of wide open guys like they had been doing. It just seemed like they really took the mantra of let's simplify it. Let's just play hard, try to take on some blocks. Maybe they're already being more physical in practice with the new DC in place.
10 plays into this game, I had to jump on CBS Sports HQ and do like one of those live betting segments. 10 plays into this game, Louisville's offense was averaging 7 yards a play and just sort of moving the ball at will. And they settled in, and I think it was a good sign for the players that are going to be back. It looked like they wanted to be there, and so that was certainly impressive from Wednesday night. Before we get into our biggest game breakdown, any other Wednesday night thoughts from any of the football that we saw or followed along with?
I have Virginia Tech fans telling me that they should expect to win 9 games next year.
They're going to win 10 games.
Again, bowl games aren't real.
They're going to win 10 games. There was 9 fumbles in that game in the rain.
Yeah, I don't know.
You guys, can we do an interlude, a live betting interlude right here?
Sure.
Because before the game, BC was a 13.5-point dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I am seeing a live line based on one drive and one turnover from SMU right now. I can get SMU at -8.5. It seems a bit of an overreaction, right?
If I had to bet that, I would take I would lay the 8.5.
Same.
Yeah, that's some other
one
sites
drive.
that
We
I
haven't
think
seen that much action yet.
Some other spots that I think are better with their live algos than what I'm assuming you're on are dealing 10 juice. So
you got a point and a half.
Yeah.
I'm in Florida, so figure it out.
I will say this could be like yesterday's Military Bowl.
Yeah, I also saw it suggested based on the Military Bowl that if we really want to add some spice to some of these other bowl games, if we can't actually have it in the weather, let's just grease up a football and just see who can go out there and make it happen with like the greased up watermelon. So, you can fumble 9 times and still win a football game. That's what Virginia Tech showed us. That's resiliency. But congratulations on Brent Pry for real, because we mentioned Virginia Tech going into this game really had to fight to even get to a bowl game. Then to add a 41-20 win against Tulane on top of that was very impressive for sure. All right, it's time to do it. We normally like to spend time, just like going deep dives into the games. And for some of these bowl games, we haven't done that. It is more of like a best bet vibes breakdown. No. This one matters more than any of it. It's the College Football Playoff Semifinals. And these are big game breakdowns. Let's tackle this one chronologically and begin at 5 p.m. Eastern time kickoff out in the Rose Bowl between Michigan and Alabama. I would like to get to the coaching matchup side of this, but I want to begin with maybe a little nitty gritty first before we go big picture. Bud, when you're starting to think about the way that Alabama and Michigan are going to line up, where are the matchup hinge points? Where is going to be the leverage established as these two teams feel each other out and try to get things going in their direction early on?
So I think if you look at Michigan's defense, I would expect them to try to copy at least somewhat the Georgia plan, which I thought was pretty effective against Alabama for the most part. Alabama scored more points than they probably earned, I guess you could say. Bama had 28 or something like that, 27, and they only had 306 yards. on the day. That was keeping Jalen Milroe in the pocket a lot, trying to limit the design run game stuff, and then let your corners handle the Alabama receivers. That's my guess as to what they'll do as well. Probably some delayed blitzes and whatnot to come after Milroe. But to me, if you're going to play that way, you need Will Johnson to hold up against Jermaine Burton, right? You need Michigan's other corners to hold up against Isaiah Bond, who has gotten better throughout the year. If Michigan's going to win this game, they probably need Milroe to cough it up once or twice, I think. And he definitely made decisions in that Alabama game that were turnover-worthy decisions that did not result in turnovers. So Michigan's going to have to make those decisions actually become turnovers. Obviously, Alabama's going to want to do the reverse, right? Limit the amount of reading defenses Milroe actually has to do. Have him do a lot of design runs. If I'm Alabama, I want to see Jalen Milroe with the ball in his hands past the line of scrimmage like 10 times, whether that's design runs or some of the read game or, hey, man, it's 1-2, go, Vince Young style, right? You running the football is your best skill. Use it. So that's the push-pull there that I see for this Michigan defense. I do think Michigan's defense up front is better than like what Georgia had, right? Personally, I think Grant and those guys are better than what Georgia's running out there this year with Logan, those dudes on the defensive front in terms of bulk and quickness. Georgia didn't have the same level of studs this year that they did the last 2 years. So we'll see how Alabama handles that. Like, this Alabama offensive line got a lot better down the stretch, and they started to bang people. Can they bang Michigan? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Michigan D is probably the best they've faced all year. I think to be real, I think totally agree with you, but they're going to have a similar game plan. You got to try to limit Jalen Milroe's ability to hurt you with his legs. Try to beat you with the mid-game pass. Mid-game, you got your corners are going to have to do a significant job on the deep ball because they're going to take some shots. Jermaine Burton has been his favorite target. Or can you limit those? But then I think on the other side, like I look at the other side of the matchup. And can Michigan run the football against Bama? Like, I think that's Nick Saban's got to be challenging his defensive front seven, saying these guys want to run it. You guys cannot let them do that. And I think they'll load up the box to do that. And they'll challenge J.J. McCarthy. And my question would be for Michigan, like, do they have the wideouts that can win those big plays? Because I think it's going to be similar. I think it's going to be opportunity for Michigan to take some of those shots down the field. Can their receivers win those matchups? Can they hit on those big plays? And it's going to be interesting because we haven't seen that on back end of the season. J.J. McCarthy, only that one touchdown pass that's been talked a lot about. And whether it's because he's hurt, because of the ankle. And I also think J.J. McCarthy is going to have to run the ball some. Like, I think that's got to be an addition to the run game that we didn't see either with that ankle injury. Because I think if you line it up and try to do what you did to Penn State or even Ohio State to some extent, just say, we're bringing Blake Corum all day, just right at your throat. I think you can. I think they'll try because that's who they are. But you've got to open it up a little bit. And when those shots are there, can they hit on them? And can those receivers win against that secondary?
I anticipate seeing McCarthy used a lot more in the run game here. I do think that for Michigan, the time that they've had off since the Big Ten championship in this playoff game will come in handy because his ankle has been bothering him quite a bit in the end of the season. I think the bigger question as far as Michigan running the ball against this Alabama defense is the Zach Zinter injury. Because I do think losing him at right guard is a big deal because they were struggling at right tackle before Zinter got hurt, and now you're bringing in a backup right guard. That right side of the line is going to be that's going to be a focus for me early in this game. I want to see how they're performing, how they're holding up, because I think you'll get a pretty good idea early on of whether or not that's going to work. And if it's not working, it's going to be very hard, I think, for Michigan to really establish the run game that they want. Because, like, the one thing about Michigan's run game is that they run a lot of power, but they do a really good job of, like, adding in little wrinkles. And some of them are just kind of, I don't know, you can call them distractions, or they're just kind of, to mess with a linebacker. And then sometimes they just work it in and, they take advantage of it. They try to set a tendency and then break it and try to confuse the defense. And they've been very good at it all year. It's just without Zinter, I don't know if they're going to be able to do a lot of the bells and whistles that they like to use in their run game. So that's a big problem. As far as the receivers on offense, I don't know, Danny. I don't know if those guys are going to be able to get open against Terry Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think if Michigan is going to have a good day in the air, it's going to have to be the tight ends. It's going to have to be Loveland and Barner having the big days over the middle, taking advantage of safeties and linebackers and coverage, because those two are they're difficult matchups for most defenses that they face. And I do think, going to the other side, this is the best offensive line Michigan's defense has faced. I also think you can make the argument that this is the best defensive line the Alabama offensive line has faced.
Yeah.
So that is going to be a very, very interesting matchup for me in this one. And then, like Bud, you touched on it, Jalen Milroe has to take care of the football, but J.J. McCarthy has to take care of the football. Like, McCarthy, by and large, has done a very good job of doing that. But what did we see last year in the playoff? He threw 2 pick sixes. And we saw earlier this year, I think it was the Bowling Green game, he threw 3 interceptions. But other than that, he's been good with the football. This is a much different defense. It's a much more talented defense than anything he has faced outside of the Ohio State and Penn State games. And we saw in those games, I mean, he was limited, but he didn't have great days. He wasn't throwing the ball all over the field on those teams. So it's going to be an interesting matchup.
So there's a great phrase that everybody uses, but it always, in my head, I always hear Bud saying it, where talking about a secondary that will put their hands on you, that they are just going to go right up to you. And when you've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, when you've got Terrion Arnold, when you've got just sort of like Caleb Downs as your, just center fielder, he can get into that run game. Like, he's a big part of getting in there, filling a gap. And so Danny, you talk about those 50-50 balls. I think this is the toughest secondary that those wide receivers have faced all season. And that's going to be like a big step up moment. If Michigan wins, then unless there's crazy coverage busts, I'm expecting that Cornelius Johnson has come up with just a massive third down grab, that you have the tight ends be able to step up and be able to make those conversions, because on just sort of a down-to-down basis, I read this as, okay, so Alabama feels confident being able to let those secondary players man up, which means we can bring extra numbers to either stop the run or apply pressure on J.J. McCarthy with an offensive line that's missing Zach Zinter. Like, this is a huge part of where I see the game being decided, is whether or not these Michigan wide receivers, who I think are capable. We're going to do a lot of picking this game apart, and we are going to give our best bets. This is a phenomenal football game. Like, if you really like all the different ways that this game can be decided and the different ways that these coaching staffs are preparing for each other. Like, for example, when Michigan has the football, I agree, their power game has little wrinkles to it. And I wonder if there's anything that they see, again, very different run game, but at least in terms of wrinkles, I wonder what they look at from Auburn, right? Because Auburn was able to run the football against this Alabama defense that's very good and kind of get them out of their fits, get them caught in a position where that they were compromised in terms of the space on the field. I think Michigan's got that in the bag, and that's going to be really important for this group as well. So I would say that whether or not Michigan can run the football, stay ahead of the chains, and make life easy on J.J. McCarthy feels like one of the biggest keys to me in this game.
I agree with you on that. I'm also really curious, how healthy is McCarthy and how banged up was he truly during the last month, right? Like, we've heard leg, we've heard shoulder. I don't know just how true that stuff is. Michigan doesn't exactly talk about injuries a whole lot, but
they don't even release a depth chart. So frustrating.
Right. So, I mean, look, if he was really pretty limited physically, how much healthier is he now than he was? I do think Michigan needs McCarthy to be the superior quarterback in this game if it wants to win the football game, right? Like, Bama can get by with 150 passing yards from Jalen Milroe if he runs for 70 and the backs go for like 80, and they win a game like 20-17. I do think JJ has to be like one of the best players on the field for Michigan to win. He probably has to make a lot of the high-level throws that Nick Saban's going to challenge him to make. And that's assuming that Michigan schemes up a couple freebies, because they almost have to. I don't think Michigan can win the game without getting a couple of the, I don't call them cheapies or freebies, but just stuff to where, oh, wow, all these angles on this player, great, we've got it. This is the look we want. Boom, we hit it, we go, right? You can formation Alabama a little bit, as Auburn did, like Chip noted. But I think McCarthy is going to have to make some serious plays within structure, and then also likely some out of structure where he's running around, uses the big time arm with the legs to make a shot down the field. I think Michigan can win the game. I mean, they're favored for a reason. Bama is certainly not the best version of Alabama that we've seen under Nick Saban. But the Michigan offense has to look better than it has looked over the past month, certainly to win the game, I think.
Live bet update. What just happened, Danny?
SMU just dropped a potential touchdown pass going down the field.
That might have been a month for it.
Just to piggyback on Bud's point, because I think both quarterbacks, obviously, with Milroe, we know how dangerous he is. Like, I think you have to worry about him going off for 100. Like, does he go off? With JJ, I think it's more, you don't have to worry about the explosive play, but if you're Bama, you want to prevent him from getting those critical third down and 3 or 4. And, you have everything defended, they're drop back to pass, and he extends those drives, like those type of situations, or like Bud was talking about, when he scrambles around and he makes a big 30, 40-yard chunk down the field when everything breaks down. Because I think they're obviously two different style of quarterbacks, but I do think both of them, for different reasons, will be integral in kind of how you can stop them and slow them down.
Let's go to the sidelines. Nick Saban has how many losses in a game of significance in the BCS college football playoff era with 1 month to prepare? 1. BCS national. Yeah, it was the Ohio State in 2014. BCS national championship games, win. College football playoff era, that first semifinal loss. Every other college football playoff semifinal that Alabama has appeared in under Nick Saban. I mean, that is going to be a commonly, referenced point, but that's real, right? That's not just Alabama. Alabama has better players than a lot of people. Everyone says like Alabama, Nick Saban is beating his assistants. Yeah, well, he's also beaten everybody else. He's got a great record against everybody. Is there something inherently, especially going up against Jim Harbaugh, who has not won a bowl game since 2015 and is on a 0-6 run in the postseason that is not just 0-6 straight up, but also 0-6 against the spread? Do those matter? Does Alabama have a significant coaching advantage in this matchup?
No. I mean, I know the record with the month to prepare, but how many times has Nick just had the vastly superior team in all those games?
I'm asking. It's going to be thrown out a lot. It's going to be a graphic on the screen. So let's unpack it.
It's like you mentioned.
Are they favored in all those?
Probably, yeah. And it's like you mentioned his record against his assistants.
In those?
He killed all his assistants until he ran into one of his assistants with a better team than his. So it's like, I don't buy any of that stuff for anything. Maybe there's a tiny advantage, but it's not like Michigan's coaching staff's stupid and they don't know how to prepare a football team for a game. So I don't put any stock into that. What I want to know, you guys saw the picture, Harbaugh, Saban, and Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Harbaugh's got his arm around Mickey. Nick's standing there. Nick won't even touch Mickey. After all Mickey did for Nick Saban this year, he wouldn't even put his hand on his shoulder. Disgusting.
He wants to stay away from the rat poison, and that includes mouse poison. And so we're just not touching Mickey. No hands on the mouse. Don't take the cheese.
Everything Mickey Mouse did for Alabama this year, he won't touch him.
Danny, what do you think? Coaching advantage?
I mean, has Tommy Rees been in this position? There's like in Jerome Moore. If anything, Michigan has the edge of the Simpsons. They didn't have Jim Harbaugh there for 6 games. Like, they're more ready to step up in this situation, it feels, than anyone. Clearly, I think Nick Saban has the edge. He's been there. The experience is there. He knows how to pull the right strings. Harbaugh's still looking for that, first playoff win after going 0-2 the last 2 years. So, yeah, I think there's an edge there to Nick Saban. But I totally understand what Tom is saying. Well, how much of an edge would you have the better team? I do think that edge has been minimized because, clearly this is like one of the teams that Alabama's had that has had more question marks than any, which Nick Saban would even tell you why it's been so enjoyable to see this team rise to the occasion, and have these wins. You guys call me crazy. Maybe I'm being stubborn. I still think they're a little overrated. I still think Michigan, roster-wise, I think you might give the edge to Michigan. Starting 11, on both sides of the ball.
I don't know. Bud, coaching advantage?
I mean, maybe slight. I mean, just in the college game, Saban has definitely been better than Harbaugh has, I think, overall. Now, Harbaugh has taken on bigger challenges, like the Stanford thing, and he obviously resurrected Michigan. But Saban
And
resurrected
Super Bowl.
Alabama.
I mean,
got the Super Bowl.
he's coached in that, so I don't think he's
Right.
intimidated.
Yeah.
That doesn't know what he's doing.
In the NFL, I mean, Harbaugh smokes Saban. Like, it's not even close.
Well, I mean, you could also go again, and this isn't like denigrating. Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach of all time. I am not. But Nick Saban at Michigan State compared to Jim Harbaugh at Stanford.
This is really good stuff. We need to clip this.
Right.
Is Jim Harbaugh, does he actually have a coaching advantage on Nick Saban? Here are the stats. People are asking, reaction shot for the thumbnail. I think there is something to be said for knowing the process and having been through the process, and that while this is by a lot of different metrics one of the least talented or not best Alabama teams, at some point the fact that Nick Saban knows how to go through everything, knows how to put that schedule together and get results, I think that matters. Not that Jim Harbaugh is incapable of doing so. I just think that in a results business, Nick Saban has more results in the postseason, even in recent years. And so I do give an advantage. I also think that within the conversation of this being one of Nick Saban's best coaching jobs is his willingness to, let things unfold over the course of a season. Bud, you mentioned the offensive line. That offensive line got a lot better throughout the year. Tommy Rees, I think, got a lot more comfortable with how to put together a game plan and how to call a game for Jalen Milroe to help set him up. He had really good counters by the time we got down to some of those games of significance by the end of the season. I mean, even if it's Nick Saban, we're like, all right, he's going to have a new starting quarterback after losing the number 1 overall pick. He's going to have a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. You're going to be like, well, yeah, it's probably a step back year. They're probably not going to be in the playoff. And it was the exact opposite. I think that Nick Saban, his flexibility is something that is for somebody who's so rigid and still eats oatmeal cream pies all the time. I think his flexibility across the season and in a game is a great strength, and his adjustments are fantastic. Not just the records, but I think that Alabama does have a coaching edge in this game.
Yeah, and until Harbaugh's teams show up in the playoff, I think you have to give an edge to Saban, right? There is something that Saban has about the prep and the approach that he just has licked. And so far, Harbaugh's team, even going back to they were a much better team, I thought, the year they played FSU in the Orange Bowl, right? Back when people used to care about bowl games, and they looked pretty unprepared for that one. So I don't know, maybe they're going to change up their approach this year. I've heard some stuff about that, how they're going to be a little more loose with it. But again, who knows? Both these teams, I think, are really good teams. I don't think we have a super dominant team this year in college football, and thus I feel like we have more uncertainty in these matchups for the playoff. Nobody really feels inevitable at this point, right? Do they? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe Bama's just that damn good. I don't know. They play a lot of close games against teams that aren't very good. So typically that's a sign that maybe you are not amazing. They could still win a natty, certainly, and are one of the favorites to do so. I do think it's interesting how Michigan, though, is still the favorite in this game.
Yeah, let's get into the best bet side of this. Michigan at 1.5, over under 44.5. What's the play?
Over.
Ooh, I was maybe going the other way. Why do you say that?
Because there's going to be points scored, Chip. They're going to score a lot of points, and the points will be scored. I mean,
24-21 gets you there, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not like this has to be a high-scoring game. Yeah, I think that this is. I mean, I will say I don't feel great about anything in this game, but of the two semis, I feel like this one has the highest blowout potential. It's just it could be either team blowing the other one out. I think a lot of people think Alabama can blow out Michigan. I don't think nearly as many realize this Michigan team is capable of blowing out Alabama too. It could go either way. So that's because of that. It's hard for me to really like anything, because I also think if it's a blowout, it could be like a 37-7 kind of game. So I don't know.
I lean under. Or sorry, go ahead, Danny.
No, go ahead.
I lean under. I don't think there's big edges in this one for me. I'm mean, I'm in a pick 'em pool with a buddy of mine, and he's very confident on Alabama, and I don't really have an edge on the side. It's like, all right, cool, we'll roll with Alabama here. Like that's fine. So like that's how not convicted I am in betting a side on this game. I really, we're doing really well in the pool, and it will matter, but it's not one of the games I feel like I have an edge on. So I'm not going to pretend that I do. There's like so many X factors here that could swing the game one way or another. I agree on Tom's point about the blowout though, because I don't really feel like either team is particularly equipped to come from behind, right? Like drop back, no play action type thing. Pass pro is definitely a weakness for both teams compared to the run game. So, yeah.
Bama did come back versus Tennessee. What was it 20-3, 21-3 half? It was a weird score.
Jordan, what was it? Remind us.
Yeah, why do we have to make him live that down? I mean, so they have come back. I like Michigan. Yeah, there's our boy Jordan. I like Michigan. I think they're the better team. The Zach Center injury, I'm worried about that one mildly. I think it's in their identity, though, what they want to be. I mean, I know it's going to seem, and somebody already said it in the chat, like Danny feels salty or whatever. I mean, you had a lot go your way. There was a lot of luck to Bama this year. That's usually not the case. Whether it was a 4th down conversion that doesn't get reviewed and they get it to extend points on the board versus Georgia, whether it's a 4th and 31, whether it's coming back against Tennessee, which that's not luck, that's coming back. But they also were in a dogfight with South Florida. They did lose to Texas by double digits. I think we're all kind of caught up in what happened against Georgia. And I'm going to go by with the majority of what I saw this season. And then he flipped the script and look at Michigan, even dealing with all the distractions, even dealing without Harbaugh for 6 games, even with dealing with injuries to J.J. McCarthy. They still pretty much ran through their schedule pretty convincingly. Like there weren't a lot of close games. I think it's because they're really good.
Give me Alabama and give me the under. I could see I could see this being a game where the clock runs a lot. Well, I think that, Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh, if neither one's hand is forced by the scoreboard to really press, I would be surprised if we see a lot of tempo in this game. And I have so much respect for both of these defenses that I'm but I'm kind of with you here on like it's not like a huge edge because I've got to really stretch to pull together scores that I think are realistic that are going to end up getting us there. But 24-17 does. It's a sweat. Yep. It's a really big sweat. But I think that's the kind of game that we're talking about right here. And I think that Michigan might have a better potential. I think we've got a higher percentage chance of Michigan blowout of Alabama than Alabama blowout of Michigan. I think that Alabama has games in college football playoff semifinals that feel like blowouts and the score is 24-6. They did it to Michigan State. They did it to Washington. They did it to Cincinnati. They did it to Clemson in 2017. These games where if you're sitting there watching it, you're like, oh, they're only like 3 plays away from getting back in this thing, but it's just never happening. And so in terms of a blowout by number, I could see a Michigan, huge win on the scoreboard more than I could see an Alabama huge win, because even the Alabama blowout, which is an under, is probably one that doesn't have a massive like 28-point deficit. It's probably one where they establish the advantage, realize they're going to get out with the win, and just kind of ride that defense the rest of the way.
Also because the nature of when it goes wrong for Alabama, it seems that this year to go like hilariously wrong, like Milrose scrambling for an 18-yard loss and losing the ball type thing. Bama has had some weird snap problems this year, by the way. Like it happened even down by the goal line against Georgia. It happened to set up the 4th and a mile against Auburn. So, yeah, in terms of like the type of plays that result in disaster that can run up the score, Bama has had more of those. I do think Bama's ceiling, though, is potentially higher than Michigan's ceiling, right? Like I think Bama's defense is probably the best in the country because their ability to cover in the back end. And if Milroe can play a clean game, I think you have to like Alabama's chance of winning. The question is, like, how many clean games has he had? Against Georgia, he got away with a lot of stuff. We will see if he can do that. As far as tempo, Bama does do a lot of like tempo to the line, check with me stuff. So like they're not really tempoing, but they're not letting you run full subs in, right? Because like they are there at the line ready to snap it.
Isn't that from the Tommy Rees book of just trying to like get you with unique personnel combinations?
They do a lot of creative stuff with formations, man. Like
Yeah.
I thought Georgia actually played it very well in that game. Like Georgia lost, but like I think they're if you go back and watch that, you could tell what Bama was trying to do, and Georgia could kind of tell as well. And it was a nice little chess match back and forth.
I will say this. I'm kind of who's on the under. Chip, you like the under?
Yeah, I like Bama.
I like the under. I think Tom's the only one in the over. My guy Rick Neuheisel. Now he might be partial to the Rose Bowl. He played there, but he always brings it up. He's like, it's a fast track. He's like, it's meant for offense. And if you look back, I was looking back at historically. Now, the last time it was even remotely lower scoring was when Bama played Notre Dame 31-14. So it's been
45
lower,
points.
But what's that?
That was in the
45 points. That's an over, baby.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it is typically, it opens up a little bit. So we'll see if that holds true.
What year was Bama Notre Dame Rose Bowl?
2020.
COVID. Right?
Yeah, it's a 2020 season.
Not mention that word right now.
Yeah.
No,
18,000 in attendance. I thought it was like from 1927 or something, where it was like before college football got big.
No, that was the great the Dodfather gets first question for Brian Kelly in the losing coach press conference. He's like, does this reveal that you need to like take something over the hump? Because it's like, no, it reveals we played Clemson in 2018 in Alabama. These teams are incredible. Like, we got a really good football team. They're just awesome. Sorry.
I have like no memory of that game. That is so weird.
It did not have the same score as what I was referencing earlier, but it was very similar in that you were looking at, you're like, well, Ian Book's not going to score 24 points against this team.
I have memory.
That was Ian Book here, right?
That was 2020?
Yeah.
In the Rose Bowl.
In the Rose Bowl.
Well,
I thought they
was
played
it in the
Cotton
Rose Bowl though? I thought it was in the
31-14.
Cotton Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they moved it to Dallas.
Yeah.
Oh, that is what happened. Because
I was gonna say, guys,
California was like locked down. They weren't letting nobody in that state.
California restrictions.
So why they call it the Rose Bowl? Why is it on the Rose Bowl website for a score?
Yeah, I vividly remember like all playoff games, or at least I thought I did. And like, I don't.
Do you remember Najee Harris hurtling over the Notre Dame defender?
Yes, in the Cotton Bowl. Like yeah.
It was the Rose Bowl in the Cotton
Bowl. It was the Rose Bowl.
Then it's almost like all these games are in the 50s. If you take that, like that one's not there, then maybe there is something to it.
That's what I'm saying. Fast track.
Okay. Listen, I will trust the coach on the turf analysis of the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It's worth a consideration before I have to continue to get out here. All right. Coming up on the other side, we turn our attention to the nightcap on New Year's Day. It's the Sugar Bowl between Texas and Washington. We'll get into that and our moneyline sprinkles next.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, turning our attention to the Sugar Bowl, which will be a Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Just, with all that Cotton Bowl confusion, just want to make sure that we've got our game and we got our city set. Texas and Washington, two fantastic head coaching jobs done here by both Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian, two great offensive minds. This is why we see this total up at 63.5. I mean, 20 points between these two semifinals in terms of looking at the totals. Quinn Ewers, Michael Penix, lots of different ways to pick this one apart. Danny, where do you want to start?
I want to start with Washington because I feel like ever since they beat Oregon for the first time, everyone's been sleeping on Washington, including in the Pac-12 championship game where most people thought Oregon would win by double digits.
Here,
we talked a little bit about, I think we all did. The other thing too, we talked a little bit about this with JJ McCarthy, the month off. I think this break is huge for the Huskies. We noticed it coming down the home stretch. Dylan Johnson in a walking boot, Michael Penix, what's wrong with him? The receivers, McMillan has been out for a while. He had missed some time. Even Roma Dunze was carrying so much of the load. I think the week off is going to, the month off is huge. And I also thought their defense improved. And that to me is going to be probably the difference one. Like, are we going to get the new and improved or improved? I guess that's probably right. New and improved Washington defense that played better against Oregon, or are we going to get the one that struggled with some of the weaker teams on the schedule? And can they protect Penix? Because I do think this will be the most physical front seven that they faced in Texas defensive line. But they get the ball out pretty quick too. Like he's been in the system for a long time. Michael Penix has. He knows where to go with the football. And if you do bring pressure, there's a lot of guys around to go out there. And as much as we're going to talk about Sark as a play caller, Kalen DeBoer is no slouch either.
Right.
In dialing up. And he's got some depth there. So somebody's going to be, a duck, a fish, whatever you want to call that mismatch, that defender, and they're going to try to locate him. So, some just initial thoughts on Washington and Texas. I think it's going to be a great – I do lean over, too, in this one. I do think it'll kind of live up to it. There's too much firepower on the field.
I think the number one thing I'm looking for, can Texas slow the Washington run game with a light box? Texas has some real beasts up front that Washington just doesn't normally see in that conference, right? Utah is probably the most physical team that Washington saw, and like they gave them some trouble at times. And Oregon has some dudes up front, but they're not like, I don't think Brandon Dorlus is a freak, the likes of like a Sweat
and Murphy
and those type of dudes who Texas has. So can Texas play with the numbers advantage in the back end and take care of the run game? I don't think you're going to shut down the run game, but limit the run game with Johnson and those dudes, because Washington blocks it up real well, and they're clean. Like they don't make a lot of mistakes. They know who they're supposed to block. They at least get a piece, not a lot of whiffs. Can Texas cause real problems with their defensive tackles in the middle while playing a light box? I think that's really important, because if you look at this, Oregon did not get bombed by Washington on the deep ball in that rematch. Really,
Dylan Johnson.
It was him, and they did a great job with formation and motion to set up a lot of those perimeter screens, which are sort of an extension of the run game, and the receivers all blocked their butts off for each other, right? But part of that was Oregon had to load up a little bit as the game went on against Johnson, and it gave you more better looks to throw those against. And Oregon also clearly concerned about the deep ball. This Texas secondary is probably the weak point of the football team. And there's one on offense I know we'll talk about when we flip to that side of the ball. But to me, it all starts with, Texas has to be able to get a win somehow, somewhere where it does not have a numbers advantage, right? If you're Texas, you're like, all right, I really don't feel great about covering these guys one-on-one down the field. Can we disrupt enough up front against an offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award to give us numbers to combat the screen game, to make sure that we are clean in the back end, to make sure that if we're traveling corners, we're traveling, we're not out of position, right? Where if we're playing more zone, that we keep leverage on it, because we're not so concerned about the run game, because we know even though a man down, we're going to win physically. Like that'll be an early tell in this game. Can Texas be disruptive against the run game without having to commit too many men to the box?
I don't even think it's just the run game. I just think this game is going to come down to Sweat and Murphy. Like it's, for what you're saying, to stop the run game for sure. But I also think like Michael Penix is impossible to sack. Like if you look at the numbers, like he never goes down. They never get to him. But Texas needs to get interior pressure from Murphy, because like they do bring pressure. Texas is one of the best, pressure rates as far as defenses in the country. And I think that if you can get it from the interior, which is what having Sweat and Murphy gives Texas a huge advantage in against that offensive line, most of the time when Penix is under pressure, it's coming from the outside and he's able to get away to the other side and escape. If you come in from the middle and you collapse the pocket on him, I don't know if he's going to be able to get away, because Michael Penix is not the most mobile quarterback in the country. Like you don't see him running a ton. He's typically a pocket passer who will move around and, find open lanes to get the throws down. So if you can get that pressure on him from the middle, that's how you're going to slow down this Washington offense. Because if you don't, like you're mentioning, Bud, their secondary is their weak spot. Rome Odunze and those guys are going to get open, and Penix is going to hit them, and they're pretty much going to be able to, name their score, and then it's just going to become, can Texas match and keep scoring as many points as they can? I think they can. I think it'll be a fun shootout. But I do think that one area, depending on how well that goes for Texas or how well it goes for Washington, that's the team that's going to win.
But what do you think is the weakest part of the team? You mentioned it earlier for Texas.
I think defensively, it's the
The back
secondary.
end. But what about the offense?
I also am interested to see, like, I think having Ford is a big advantage in this game. You know, can Washington confuse a young player like Hill, who's got a boatload of athleticism? But I mean, Washington does so much stuff with shifts and formation and motion. How much does having the run up to this game, the 15 practices to rep it, how much does that help you? Right? Like, can you send this stuff? I think it probably helps some. On the flip side, I think that for a weird reason, Texas is not great in the red zone. If I'm Washington, I don't think I can cover these guys with my guys down the field. But I can maybe win in the red zone because Texas has shown a real ability to kind of mess around. You know, Sark does such a damn good job. We talk about big game Sark, and Sark is a play caller. And, you know, formationing and motion, just like DeBoer does, to get the matchups that he wants and to get his guy on your duck, if you will. But that's harder to do in the red zone, right? And Ewers is really good at hitting these wide open guys because Texas schemes him. And he also can make some tough throws, but he's not been as good in the red zone. So if I'm Washington, I want to force Texas to beat me in the red zone. And I don't really love my guys trying to cover Mitchell. And if Worthy's healthy, and
I think so I was looking at it, he's practicing, I know he was on crutches at the end of the championship game, but even like a week ago, he said that Xavier Worthy was back. My anticipation is he's good to go. As dangerous as Xavier Worthy you should expect him to be. I think he'll be ready to go for this one. I
think he matters. You know, with how much they move him around and his threat to just take the distance, I think he really matters.
Danny, what's the Texas thing that stands out to you?
I'm curious to see the backs because CJ Baxter has been kind of the lead back. Is he there? Is he up to speed? Pass protection, kind of filling in that role. Jonathan Brooks was one of the better ones, and they've been without him for a while, so it's not like he's breaking in brand new. But I'm curious there. I'm curious to see if they can establish the run. Can they start running the football, kind of control that line of scrimmage? That is where I do think Texas has the advantage along the offensive and defensive lines. And so can they establish that and kind of impose their will in what's a very, physical game? And, it's something – it has been brought up about the red zone inefficiency for Texas. It is a little bit perplexing, but definitely is something real. So if you can kind of keep everybody in front of you, not let them give up the big ball, get them down there, force them to field goals, that's a huge win if you're Washington.
100%. We've been talking about Texas's red zone woes all season long. If there's if there's an aspect to this where Washington would be able to close any kind of perceived disadvantage gap, that would be it. And I'll tell you what, I don't think if I'm Texas, I'd like to put Washington away because I think the reason people are sleeping on Washington is because of all the close games. They won 9 straight games that were decided by 10 points or less. That's bananas. I mean, it is something that we have not seen in the modern era of college football, to be able to string together 9 straight wins of 10 points or less. And so who's got more confidence down there in like those final moments? Kalen DeBoer's got these guys ready to play. I think if you're Texas, you want to be able to jump out to a big lead and then just kind of defend it. If this thing comes down to who is going to make, if it's one quarterback that has to make a play in the fourth quarter of a game, give Michael Penix the edge over Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah. He's been there, done it more.
Quinn's
been like hot and cold. He's a little streaky.
Yeah.
Even within games. I mean, look how he started the Oklahoma game. It looked like it was going to be a disaster, and he actually rebounded and played pretty well to give him a chance. Took him down the field, and I think that was more on the play call than it was on him to kind of settle and not go for the jugular, but go for the field goal. But Penix has been there multiple times, this season and come out on the winning end.
Tom, what's the best bet for the game? Where are we going?
Over.
All right, who's winning?
You got a coin on you I could flip real quick? I mean, I feel like Texas is the more complete team because I do think defensively I like the Longhorns better than I like the Huskies. But I've said the same thing about Oregon twice now when Washington was going up against the Ducks, and Washington won both of those games. So I'm picking Texas to win the game, but that's just because they asked me for a pick. I have no idea who's going to win the game. I just think it'll be high scoring.
I think Texas has more difference makers on defense, and I'm going to go Texas. Like, I'm not hammering this. I don't think it's a best bet, but if I had to bet the game, I would lay it with Texas. I do think Washington is really good. I just think that, Texas has defensive linemen that I think, and granted, Washington has some too as well. Like, it's a good matchup, but I do think Texas has more like special players and like next level guys. So I'll go Texas.
I like Washington in the 4.5 for sure. I don't hate them to win the game, but I'll take up those points because I do think this will be a fun game. I like the over too. I think it will come down to that, fourth quarter type game. I just think we've been sleeping on and started the conversation with this. I think we've been sleeping on Washington all year long. I picked them to win the Pac-12 and kind of got off it. I was like, they got some weaknesses, defenses and liability. They have just found ways to win. They went undefeated in the best conference in college football this year.
I declared them a wagon in like week 4. I haven't been sleeping on anybody. I just think that...
No, I said me. Me.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they've won. So they've won 20 straight games right now. Mm-hmm. And you know what one of those also was? Beating Texas. 27-20 in last year's Alamo Bowl.
Yeah. One of the lowest scoring Alamo Bowls of all time. Disappointing.
They did play like crap for a month.
They did.
Right? Like,
totally.
There was some reason to get off Washington. Like, they started playing poorly.
Yep.
Honestly, about a month.
And that's where I do think that's where it comes back to. I think they were banged up. I think the season started to wear on them. Lost players at critical positions, or they're playing out there at 60-70%. But most importantly, they didn't lose.
Yeah, basically you had 15-7 against Arizona State at home, set off a bunch of alarm bells in the immediate aftermath. You then have 42-33 at Stanford. That wasn't great. Went in a shootout against USC, made sense. Utah came into Seattle, gave them a fight. 22-20 against Oregon State wasn't really pretty. 24-21 against Washington State wasn't really what a lot of people were expecting. And then that Oregon game, 34-31, but I kind of got Washington having the upper hand in that one the whole way. That was a good job by the Ducks to be able to, come back and give themselves a chance to pull off a miracle. But it's Washington and Alabama are both occupying this space where you're like, all those close games. And then the other side of it is like, yeah, but they win all those close games. So, all right. So we got
all of them. One of them won them all. One of them lost one.
Oh, sorry.
Don't forget.
All right. So you got Michigan, Danny, you got Michigan and Washington in your title game?
I do.
Sick. All right. And then coin flip. I've got Alabama and Texas. Bud?
I'll go Texas, Michigan.
Okay.
Read the science, boys.
Oh,
we've established games don't matter this year. So the only way that this season can end is Alabama beating Texas in the national title game. It's really the only way
that's probably
see, we were right.
Yeah, that's the full circle. Right. Yeah, that's the full circle. The CFP and on rules say that that's the way that this should end. All right. Coming up on the other side, our money line sprinkles for the college football playoff. We'll also do an update on our sprinkles that we've got so far. Next.
There's more than just pride on the line. It's a top-of-the-table Old Firm derby. Celtic, Rangers, Saturday on CBS Sports Network.
To update some of the recent sprinkle results that we have had, Tom and Chip both taking massive L's with the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. Boom. That sprinkle was not in the cards much at all. We've got NC State, Miami, and Kentucky coming up as well. the reminder of the other moneyline sprinkles we got on the board. Tom is on Iowa and Ole Miss for the 30th and the 1st. Bud is on Iowa and Maryland. And I'm on Iowa, Wisconsin, and Ole Miss. Danny, do you want to add any sprinkles for?
What can I get on Florida State? Well, I mean, plus 19. What's the outright money line? Let's go.
All right. Well, we can check it thanks to our friends because this Moneyline Sprinkles segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, make every moment more. And
FanDuel has the best price right now, plus $8.90, Danny.
Wow.
Plus $8.90. So Danny in there for Florida State plus $8.90.
Oh, you're putting that on there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely a word of caution. I got 2 for you.
All right.
I would take Oklahoma, an underdog against Arizona.
All right.
And when's the Ole Miss Penn State game?
That's going to be
next week, or is that
Saturday?
I'll take Ole Miss.
Danny jumping on Ole Miss as well. And then Oklahoma, we got a little plus 110 from our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. First one to take the Jackson Arnold experience on the Moneyline Sprinkles. I like to see it. Okay, College Football Playoff Semifinal Moneyline Sprinkles. Our lines are tight. The payouts are not big, but there's still some opportunity there. Who wants to throw one on the board?
Give me Alabama's money line. What's it at?
Even?
Yeah. So is it even plus money? That's the thing.
Is it even?
There's there's like some plus 08, plus 05.
I'll take a plus 05.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, I'm looking at FanDuel Sportsbook has Alabama plus 108. That's
then I'll give me the 108 if FanDuel's got it.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to be going as well, picking Alabama to win the game. Who else wants to throw one on the board?
I'll take the only one worth any value. Give me Washington. We were just talking about them.
Got Washington plus 152 for Danny. Bud, you want to you sitting on it, or what you going to take here?
I'm okay here. I really
cool.
I don't see a lot on this. Maybe some second half opportunities. We will see.
Sorry. So Tom and Chip jumping on Alabama plus 108 because the way the season is supposed to end is with Texas losing to Alabama, thereby justifying all of the decisions of the selection committee. Danny going to jump on Washington, which they have been sleeping on the team from Seattle plus 152. Bud going to keep it parked. He's rooting for Iowa and Maryland and Kentucky and NC State here in the next couple games for his Moneyline Sprinkles. And this Moneyline Sprinkles segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel, make every moment more. Did we ever hear from the dentist? We texted him.
Yeah, I think he liked Penn State. Let me see what he said.
Wow. Turning his back on the Rebels.
Yeah, let me see here.
What a hater.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
While you're looking that up.
Give me Penn State minus 4.5 is what he says.
Wow. Fight with the dentist. That's a root canal. Get it? Root canal. There you go. I did see so they can have freshmen can enroll early and go to bowl practices, right? They can start working with the team.
Yeah.
Can transfers? And if so, why not?
If they're enrolled, I think they can, yeah.
But I guess you couldn't enroll because classes haven't started. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I don't know.
So who would you be pulling in for bowl practice?
Well, I was just thinking about, doesn't Ole Miss have the number 1 transfer class?
Okay, but those guys can't play though. Like the freshmen can't play in the bowl. Like they could practice in theory.
You could get them work. Let's go.
I mean, Alabama brought in Michigan.
Paying them all that money, start earning it.
Yeah. Alabama just hiring Michigan staffers.
Yeah.
All right, this field.
Hope he doesn't know
Fenway Bowl is so bad.
Oh my gosh!
Right now.
Hey, SMU's on the board though. This might be the final score. The way this thing's going.
This is why they don't play baseball games in the rain.
This will not be the final score. Somebody will have a ridiculous
or in
turnover,
December,
like a snap over their head type thing. Fairly sure.
Shout out to Tom, muscling through this thing, battling sickness.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well done.
Good job, Tom. We appreciate it. We will be back with you on New Year's Day, right? After the semifinals? Yeah, at
Yeah.
night after the
It'll
semifinals.
probably be more like January 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what that is. But of course, make sure you're subscribed to the Cover 3 podcast on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. If we need to go live, we will. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
COVID sucks.
See y'all.